Season 5, Episode 26 of Brackets, Bubbles, and Bitch Stealers. I am Sam Fetterman. That is Jonathan Litzkin, and it feels like a January Saturday night because Michael DeRosa is here with us. How you doing, Michael?
You know, I'm not going to lie. I don't know how you guys aren't celebrating week 10 of Dana White's Contender Series, the season finale, like I am. But it's okay. Guess we're all in our different worlds. And happy to be here while I'm totally not sweating fight bets to my left. It's not happening.
And North Carolina, Memphis is going on right now. So if you're watching that, I pray for you because that has been an awful, awful display of the sport. It feels like October when we're watching that, but it's time to talk about Big East basketball. The only conference left of the power conferences that is double round robin. The only conference left that is not like a mega conference at this point, and I like that. I think it's exactly what the Big East should be. The Big East. I know that some people want the Big East to expand a little bit, add a couple teams. No, don't do it. Don't do it. Stay at 11. And the only reason for me that the Big East should expand is if like the ACC falls apart and you have the opportunity to get Syracuse and Pitt back.
Agreed. 100%. If there was one team I'd add to the Big East, it's this team.
Yeah. Jonathan, anything?
A lot of history in this conference. It's always a fun watch. The atmospheres in this conference are always electric. And then, they've done a nice job mixing in some new blood in this conference with Creighton and Butler, who are now not that new to the conference, but they've been nice additions.
Yeah. Let's start. Let's go. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna go through the my Big East rankings. I am hosting this one, and so we're gonna go through my Big East rankings team by team, 1 through 11. This will probably be shorter than the other previews because there's fewer teams in the conference, but it allows us to go a little deeper into each team. And the first team is the two-time reigning national champion, of course, the team that we've already seen play this year. They were playing yesterday in a public exhibition, charity exhibition at Mohegan Sun. They beat Rhode Island 102-75, and that is obviously the UConn Huskies. They're the number 3 team in the AP preseason poll. They're my number 3 team entering the season. They have so many different pieces. Jonathan, what stands out to you about this UConn team?
Well, what stands out to me is that there's a lot of new, not new faces in terms of like they brought in like a ton of new guys. They certainly did bring in new guys, but like you're going to have new faces as like the stars. I mean, outside of Alex Karaban here, like you have a lot of returning players, but most of them were kind of buried on the depth chart last year or just like straight up role players. And a lot of these guys are going to have to step up as well as some of these transfers. I'm looking a lot at Solo Ball as a guy that ends up being like a star for this team, as well as Alex Karaban. Samson Johnson, I think, could probably take a step forward, although I wouldn't be like that surprised if he just is who he is at this point. I'm really interested to see how they handle the point guard position. Can Hassan Diarra be like a national championship caliber starting point guard? I would have my doubts about like this team three-peating, but I still think this is an excellent roster. I didn't really talk that much about the transfers, but Aiden Mahaney has been a star the last couple of years at St. Mary's. We're not even sure if he's going to start for this team from day one. Terrace Reed has been just kind of like a big man that's like, it feels like a breakout. It could kind of be waiting for him, although he was a developmental project when he went to Michigan in the first place. And then I'm just in love with Liam McNeely, really good sharpshooting freshman that plays really smart. He'll impact the winning at a very high level right away for this team.
Michael?
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised you still have them at 1, considering they were either tied or losing to Rhode Island at half. I think you missed something there. No, all seriousness, I think the only interesting takeaway is, as Jonathan mentioned, they want to run Mahaney off the bench, or Hurley doesn't really want to run him at the 2. I think that's kind of interesting in how they try to use Aiden Mahaney throughout the year, but there's no way that... end of the round. Okay, sorry about that. I thought he had a guillotine. That would have been cool. I think you mentioned it with McNeely too. The way they're going to use McNeely, Karaban, Mahaney, all those guys thrive off of coming off screens. Like they're really good off-screen shooters, and Mahaney's good with ball screen actions too. Just really good off screens. UConn's offense is obviously as intricate as it's ever been. I would agree. I don't know if they're a preseason top 5 team. I see UConn fans like angry that they're not number 1. I don't think this is the most talented roster in the country. I think if the jersey on the front said Providence per se, I think we'd have them kind of lower in the rankings, but also UConn's earned the right to be higher because of the 2 national championships. I don't know if you've heard about it. They did win 2 national titles, but this team's the king of the Big East until someone dethrones them, and no one's dethroned them. So they're the king. They should be number 1, and I expect them to win the conference again.
Yeah, I think solo ball, just like from what we saw in yesterday's exhibition, just looked like a guy that, I mean, he looks like a different player now. He's so much more confident. He's got the ball in his hands and he's scoring off the dribble. He's hitting shots. He's really athletic. He can defend. I think that what we saw from solo ball yesterday is extremely encouraging. He had 18 points in 19 minutes on 10 shots. He grabbed 5 boards. He drained 3 threes last year. Like he came in from Brewster Academy, and everyone knew like, oh, solo ball, he can shoot, and he didn't really shoot that well last year. And he played some glue minutes. They needed him as like the 5th guy when Castle got hurt early in the season, and then he kind of fell out of the rotation. But what Solo is able to do this year, off the dribble, handling the ball, I think we'll take a load off of Diarra. We'll take a load off of Mahaney, because I was not really expecting solo ball to step up the way that he did, the way that it seems like he has this offseason. Liam McNeely, and Caravan and Mahaney, those 3, as you mentioned, like they're going to run them all off actions. I think they're all going to be used as screeners as well. I think that this UConn offense uses everybody as a screener. It uses the ball as a screener. It uses if something is able to move on the court, it is used as a screener in this UConn offense. And I think that it's just a really creative system that goes in. So it's so intricate, works in so many different ways. And it's always like adding new wrinkles as you get to later in the season. And it's why they've been so dominant in the NCAA tournament, because you have so much to scout for on a short scout of a team that you don't usually see. And they can just throw so many new things at you, because sure, it's a lot of complicated sets, but it's really just the same. It's the concepts that just add up and add up and add up over the course of the season, that you can throw them together in so many different ways. And that's how you get such a diverse playbook.
They have counters to your counters. It's really unique.
They have counters to your counters to your counters counters.
It's crazy. Hurley's a freaking scientist. And one note that I don't think really is ever going to get mentioned on any podcast previewing UConn, because you don't really have to talk about him. I think Ahmad Noel is probably the best playmaker in this class.
Yes. Ahmad Noel was one of my favorite players to watch in high school basketball last year. Before the season, and before I knew about the UConn connection there, before I knew UConn was really recruiting him, I thought he was one of my favorite players in the recruiting class, and he had an awesome year at Imhotep. He can score, getting to the basket. He's tough. He's physical as a guard, and he is really smart. Can hit shots. He's a terrific on-ball defender too. He's like my version this year of what Layden Blocker was for me last year. And we'll get to Layden Blocker when we talk about DePaul, and I think he's going to have an amazing season. But Ahmad Noel, he's going to be too good to keep off the floor, I think, at times. But he's also more of a wait until he's a sophomore and he's running the show, because he's going to be a truly, really great point guard down the road. Terrace Reed, when he comes in and he'll just grab like Samson Johnson will throw down dunks. Terrace Reed will like plod the paint and like be physical, grab all the rebounds. Like, they're different in different ways than Klingon and Samson were different. Yeah. And they're different in different ways than Adama and Klingon were different. It's like Terrace Reed, if you can get him to play with a high motor, you'll get a lot of production out of him in spurts, because he's physical. He can really rebound. He's not much of like a vertical jumper, so the rim protection is probably still like Samson's a better shot blocker, but Terrace Reed is physical and he can guard post ups a little bit better, I think, if he stays out of foul trouble. that's the big concern with Samson Johnson, the foul trouble. How will he be able to hold up playing 23 minutes a night instead of 13? Because, I mean, you look at the national championship game, he fouled out in 5 minutes. I also think Jalen Stewart could have some big games. Back earlier in the offseason, I pegged him as like the guy that was going to take the freshman to sophomore jump. It seems like that's solo ball. But Jalen Stewart, athletic, can hit shots, rebounds, defends, like just does everything you need him to do. I think that there's NBA upside with him as just like a guy that does a lot of good things. And then we haven't really even talked about Caravan, who could be an All-American. He made a couple publications All-America teams. He's one of the best shooters in college basketball, range everywhere, extremely under control as a ball handler, attacking the basket, off of the catch. He's not an initiator, but he is more than capable of scoring on the drive. He has a little bit of a back down game as well. It's not like a back down in the low post, it's more of a back down in the mid post. And he's an underrated defender too. He's been a key piece of what UConn has done over the last 2 years. And I think the logical evolution for him is to continue to be a key piece and probably be this team's leading scorer.
Yeah, just to add my final thoughts here on the subject of Noel, he is a top 15 freshman for me. Like, think he does an excellent job using his unique frame to get in the lane. Also is a pretty consistent jump shooter. And Sam, you mentioned the defensive ability. What I don't like for him is like if they're going to bring Mahaney off the bench, that probably limits his playing time. Because like, yeah, he is sort of a combo guard, but you're going to be really small if you're playing him at the 2. So like that, it probably does hurt his impact as a year 1 player if Mahaney is coming off the bench.
We will talk about it later. A lot of small backcourts in the Big East. Some that are easily big, but quite a few small ones.
Yeah.
That's tease. That was what we call
it. There's definitely some smaller backcourts in this league. And I'm not super convinced that Mahaney will come off the bench like when the season starts. Like, I'm not convinced that Solo starts over Mahaney. Even though Solo looks like he's taken a huge step, I still think Mahaney is Mahaney, and he is going to be we saw it in the second half of that Rhode Island game. He completely took over, and he had those moments at St. Mary's where he was just completely unstoppable for stretches. And it just seems like he can get whatever he wants. Shots are falling. He can drive. He'll finish with craft. He'll get to the line. I mean, I'm not convinced he's not starting just because he didn't start in an exhibition.
And even if it doesn't start, he's playing 27 minutes a game, basically a starter.
Exhibitions are always weird in terms of like lineups and rotations. You're trying things out. Like I remember 2 years ago, like Dennis Gates' first year at Mizzou, we went to the press conference after their exhibition against Wash U, and like someone asked him about the starting lineup, and he's like, I kind of just pointed to 5 guys and like threw them out there. Well, the 5 guys
that's what he did against Jackson State.
The 5 guys that he pointed at and sent out there were the 5 starters on opening night as well. So,
see, I was going to go the other way. I remember last year during an exhibition game, Butler fans got really excited about Connor Turnbull because he was dunking all over some poor D3 team's backups. He redshirted.
Yeah.
That's why you don't put him at things.
My number 2 team in the Big East is Marquette. Michael, what do you think of that ranking for Marquette, and what are your kind of initial thoughts on the Golden Eagles this year?
I think that's a little high. I think Marquette is a team that I think just kind of has like a high floor. Like, you know what you're getting out of Marquette, and unless a couple injuries happen, you know they're going to be good. Like, they're probably a tournament team regardless, just of almost anything that happens. Like, they just feel like they're safely in the tournament, safely in that top half seed range. But I don't think they have the ceiling to be an elite Big East team unless some of the other teams just kind of underperform, really. Cam Jones, that said, Cam Jones is my pick for Big East Player of the Year. I think everything's just going to be on his shoulders. I think he could have a lethal season in terms of counting stats. He's going to put up numbers. He's going to run the team. I think he's comfortable with that, though. I do want to see how they make it work because I just kind of think he does so many things well off the ball that if you just have him on the ball, that could take away from that. Rather, if you can use him in a combo role, him and Stevie Mitchell in a combo role, I think that's interesting. And last point, I think Oso is going to be harder to replace than Tyler Kolek, partially because of what they bring, what they have already to replace Kolek with Cam Jones, Stevie Mitchell, Chase Ross stepping in the starting lineup. He's going to fit perfectly. But with Oso, it's Ben Gold. Gold gives you shooting that Oso didn't give you, but nobody's as good a passer to 5 as Oso. And Oso was so good defensively. He could switch onto guards. He was a good rim protector. That I just don't think you're getting that out of Ben Gold. And I don't think Joplin's a particularly great defender, so I think they could struggle defending the interior. But this team's going to be good. As I said, high floor, their tournament team pretty safely in my eyes.
Yeah, I kind of echo a lot of Michael's thoughts. Like, you could probably bet on this team being a top 4 team in the league, and you'll feel safe about that. Like, Oso was a really unique player. Like, I don't really think there was anyone in college basketball like him in recent memory. Like, a guy that could just play out of the high post like that, was like had a really good touch, but also like saw the floor pretty well and had nice bounce as well. Like, I was like very high on him as an NBA prospect.
Yeah, same.
With Shaka Smart, like, you can always kind of bet that like the internal development is going to be good, and like that's why this team probably has a high floor. Like, Cam Jones is going to be maybe the best player in the conference, maybe the top scorer in the conference, maybe like one of the top scorers in the entire country. And then like Joplin is a high volume shooter. Gold showed some flashes last year. If you want like a breakout guy, like I'd probably bet on Chase Ross being maybe this team's second best player, because he already gives you like a pretty good floor as like as an on-ball defender. And like, I think his speed really gives him an advantage on the offensive end as well. I think he was already pretty efficient last year, not like super efficient, but I'd bet on his usage being a lot higher this year as he gets older. My question for this team is like, how do they survive how does their depth hold up until like they get Sean Jones back? Because I think Sean Jones, like, if they get him back, I should say, because Sean Jones was like pretty good at the start of the season for them last year, especially on the defensive end. He's like one of the fastest players in college basketball, and like could really help this team off the bench. Like, who's the guy off the bench that's stepping up for them? Whether it's Zayd Lowry, Trey Norman, maybe one of the freshmen. Like, this team is pretty thin without Sean Jones, and we don't know whether they're getting him back like at all yet.
I wouldn't be surprised if Jones doesn't play all season. Just based on what I've heard, he might be fully healthy in like January, February, but by that point, why bring him back?
I just look at this team like I wish they brought in one piece in the transfer portal. Like, I get that it's not Marquette's thing to go into the portal and make and go make those moves, but I really think that they are like, I mean, I have them as my number 2 team in the Big East, but do I even have them as a top 15 team in the country? Yeah, I have them at number 15. So like, the Big East, I think is obviously UConn is like a top tier team in the sport. I think after that, there's kind of there's no other like truly elite team in the Big East. I don't think this year, but Marquette's going to be really good. Cam Jones is going to be awesome. I think he's probably one of, I mean, you said you're picking him for Big East Player of the Year. I wouldn't be surprised if he is like the most popular pick for Big East Player of the Year. I think a lot of people are going with Caravan. People are probably going with Kadari as well. Like, those are probably like the 3 that you see the most. I think that Cam Jones we mentioned how much he can do with the ball in his hands and how good he is off the ball. I think you're right on Chase Ross, Jonathan. And I think if someone's going to step up off the bench, I like Zayd Lowry. I think he can be a good piece. I am definitely concerned about their interior defense, as you mentioned, Michael. But I think Ben Gold on the offensive side of the ball will give the team a different element. They're going to be different. They're going to be very different. I don't think they went out there because they didn't go out there and try to replace Kolek or Iguodala. They're like, all right, we're going to see what we can do with the guys that we have. And I think Shaka, I think Shaka's kind of earned the trust to be able to do that and say, all right, they're still going to be pretty darn good.
You want a kid not enough people are talking about that will not be at Marquette for all 4 years? Demarius Owens is going to be an NBA player. Size, I think he's like listed 6'8". He played a guard growing up. He has legitimate guard skills. Super, super athletic. We're going to see that kid get so much better over time, and he will not be at Marquette for 4 years. He is an NBA player.
I think I'm also interested to see what Caden Hamilton looks like after the red shirt. But yeah, like Marquette, their season ended in like the worst possible way last year, just like missing wide open shot after wide open shot. I don't think I'm glad like they didn't like hit a panic button and like try and change everything. But I also think that they could have stood for maybe doing a little bit more in the offseason, especially knowing that Sean Jones might not play for the entire season.
Yeah, agreed.
My number
buy stock now. It spreads.
What'd you say?
Demarius Owens buy stock now, and then it spreads to like pretend that I'm John Rothstein quoting John Rothstein.
That's two different John Rothsteinisms, and that's kind of what you just said. Anyway, my number 3 team in the Big East, and I had them number 2 until very recently, is Xavier. Jonathan, I know you kind of talked me into Xavier before I even became really high on Xavier. So kind of give me the pitch that you gave me.
Yeah, so I had Xavier like as high as like number 12 or 13 nationally before the injury to Traore. I still think this is a good team, but like he was an important piece for them in terms of like he was long, he like can defend multiple positions. Like I think their defense probably takes a significant step back with him out. However, I still think this offense is really dynamic and going to be really good. They have a ton of shooters, guys that can create shots all over the floor. I love that Zach Fremantle is back. He was awesome 2 years ago for a team that got a 3 seed. Ryan Conwell was so good last year at Indiana State. And like, while nobody really replicates the spacing that Josh Schertz provides in offense, I think Xavier is like pretty close in terms of like how they play offense, where they're going to spread you out and play a lot of guys 5 out. Without Traore, I really question like how much you can get out of John Hugley as a center at this point in his career. Like he's been at a couple different stops. He was really good at Pitt for a little bit, but like how much mileage does he have left on him, and like what is he going to get you? This team, like I think, is really deep in the backcourt. I would question a little what they have in the front court, but I do like how good's their rim protection going to be? Like can they survive injuries there? But like I'm still really excited to watch this team, and I think Sean Miller is a pretty damn good coach.
Yeah, that Traore injury was brutal. They were really, really high on him. He was a player I wrote quite a bit about in the Everything College Basketball magazine. Buy the Everything College Basketball magazine. It's on the House of College Hoops Twitter. Give me money, please. Anyway, yeah, they loved Traore, and I think that injury hurts. And then how much are you going to get out of John Hugley, as Jonathan mentioned? Like, he was a guy who was really good as sophomore year at Pittsburgh, right? Yeah, at Pittsburgh first.
Yeah.
Then he goes to Oklahoma, and towards the end of the season, he got benched for Sam Godwin, former walk-on, or he's walking on this year with an NIL Scully thing. So, like, it's kind of greasy. Another question I had with this team is Zach Fremantle is coming off of the foot injury, and wasn't the most fleet of foot to begin with. They want to run him at the 4. How's he going to survive defensively? And just kind of that entire defense as a whole, because you're going to be running, if you go the starting lineup that was projected before, instead just swap Hewley at the 5, it was you run in McKnight at the 1, Maddox at the 2, Conwell at the 3, Fremantle at the 4, Hewley at the 5. I think that lineup would struggle defensively. But what it would do also is give you buckets offensively. All those guys can score. And David McKnight is, I think, the perfect point guard to run and assist with the shooters you have around him. Dante Maddox is a 40% 3-point shooter. Ryan Conwell is good everywhere. That kid, I have him on my first team All Big East. I think he's going to be an absolute stud. And Zach Fremantle can space the floor too. He is just a well-rounded offensive game. Even Hewley, I think, was like 40%, albeit on kind of low volume, but 40% from three. That is an offense that could be really unique. I have questions with this team defensively, and with as much depth as they have in the backcourt, especially with a guy like Dalen Swain, who will be playing 3-4 now, who was on every single breakout list that I've ever seen. That so much so that people are like, he's the sleeper breakout, that everyone's talking about him, that he is now not a sleeper. Just kind of depth is a two-edged sword. When it works really well. But when it doesn't, egos get in the way, team chemistry is just bad, and everything kind of falls apart. So I could see it going both ways for Xavier. I think Xavier is the team in the conference with the widest range of outcomes. I think Xavier hitting their ceiling has them live to win the league. I think Xavier hitting the floor could have them outside the tournament, frankly. I would bet probably somewhere in the middle, which is them making the tournament fairly comfortably, being in the conversation to win a game, maybe two. But yeah, I think Xavier's range of outcomes is really wide. And I think, quite frankly, they're probably the most interesting team to watch from that perspective of just what will happen on any given day. Because there's some games they're going to hit like 37 threes and they're just going to whoop some poor team. And then there's some days those shots aren't falling.
They hit 37 threes. That would be.
I was exaggerating, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
That might be surprising. I did one of those. They're not scoring 112 points off 3-pointers.
Yeah.
109. But
111.
Same thing. Potato, tomato, same thing.
Jerome Hunter is a guy that I don't think we've talked quite enough about so far. Didn't play last year, but was so important to everything that they did 2 years ago when they were really, really good in Sean Miller's first year at Xavier, because he was a four that could play inside really well, just cleaned everything up on the offensive glass and guarded multiple positions. I do worry about how he looks now coming back from the injury, and I think there was medical a medical condition there as well. So definitely concerned, but again, I think that you can definitely bank on getting good production out of that. And Fremantle obviously was also a huge piece 2 years ago, and for however long, for about the 7 years before that, he was also a key piece. Conwell, Dalen Swain. I like Trey Green too as a second point guard behind McKnight to give them another look in the backcourt. And we haven't even really mentioned Marcus Foster, who's another guy that can score the basketball. So I think there's so many options of guys that can score. Definitely concerned about Hugley versus having Traore and Hugley. I wouldn't be surprised to see them play Hunter as a small five at times if he comes back to being maybe what we could, maybe a little bit of what we saw 2 years ago.
I wouldn't be surprised if that lineup, Hunter Fremantle, is better than Hugley Fremantle. I just think Hunter just kind of complements Fremantle very well, because Fremantle can bang a bit inside, but he can also step out, hit a jump shot, while Hunter just kind of does all the dirty work. It just kind of fits well to me.
I also think like Sam kind of nailed it with Trey Green. I really liked him when he was in high school, and he just kind of was forced into a role that probably he wasn't ready for last year. Was really inefficient. I bet on him being a lot more stable as a backup point guard this year.
Yeah, I agree. As you said, just will be stable, and being a team that can go and play a backup point guard and not see a significant drop off is something that I think not a ton of teams have, and I think Xavier is gonna have that ability if Trey Green is as good as I think he'll be this year. My number 4 team in the Big East is St. John's. Rick Pitino, who may as well be the special assistant hype man to Mark Pope now at Kentucky. Believe it or not, he does actually coach his own college basketball team at St. John's, and they look really good. They will be way more physical on the defensive end this year. They will be really, really good at getting into the paint on the offensive end. Their guards are good playmakers. They can penetrate. I think that there's a lot of recipe for this team being just an absolute bitch to play against.
Yeah, what was Rick doing? Like, I understand you know, you want to support your former player, get it. You want to like show up to the event, you're gonna have a good time. Gare, why did he show up again? It's just like the party. It's all right. The party was over, and then he's just still there. It's like, go off, Rick. But yeah, you can do whatever you want if you're Rick Pitino. But
for legal reasons, I'm joking when I say this. But like, if St. John's plays Kentucky in the NCAA tournament, do we have to like? Are we sure he won't throw that game?
I think if you're on the selection committee and you let that happen, I'm not gonna lie, that'd be great content. I'm fully here for it. That would give me a full week of talking points. I wouldn't even need to talk about any other game. I would just be able to talk about that. I'd be the Rick Pitino expert. It's actually a good brand. I should kind of work on that. But with this team, I think one thing that was really interesting that Rick said today was that he wants to start Sim Wilcher. You guys were talking about Trey Green as that freshman, sophomore jump for a small guard. I think that's Sim Wilcher, especially with what he's done already. Sim's a scorer. And I think this team, the way it's built, could use a scorer. But also, I kind of think that could take away from some of what they do well. Their lineups are going to be really interesting because what I thought the projected starting lineup would have been was Davon Smith, Kaderi Richmond, RJ Luis, Aaron Scott, and then Zuby at the 5. That 1 through 5, you would struggle with shooting. Aaron Scott's definitely the best shooter of those 5. I know Davon Smith shot 40% from 3 last year, but he's career 29% and shot like 60% from the line. So I'm just going to take that as that was the outlier. And if he proves me wrong, I'll look like an idiot. Happened many times before. But so yeah, I think they'd struggle outside shooting, but defensively, that lineup running a full court press that Pitino wants to run, dude, that would be terrifying for any opposing offense. That would be scary. The amount of length they have and athleticism. Richmond's one of the best defenders, if not the best defender in the conference, aside from Kalkbrenner. RJ Luis, super long, super athletic, guard multiple positions. Aaron Scott can guard multiple positions. Davon Smith is strong for a guard, rebounds really well. Like, you guys already have the stat of him leading the Pac-12 in triple-double, so I didn't even need to bring that up, even though I just did. But, yeah, I think that team could be really annoying defensively. I think they're a top 10 defense in the country this year. And just because of that, they're going to be really good. I have St. John's second to tease our rankings from the Everything College Basketball magazine. Please pay me money. I need to keep these lights on, especially because Dana White's Contender Series is going to be over after this week. I love Tuesdays.
Yeah, I'll go next here. I think I'm too low on St. John's right now, and I kind of realized that the other day. This team has a pretty clear identity. So even if like there are some things that they don't do extremely well, like shooting the 3, like I think you can bank on them being a really annoying team to play against because they're going to be able to pressure the rim and they're going to be able to pressure you defensively. So like you're just going to like be in hell for 40 minutes when you play them on a nightly basis because guards, and then they have some pretty solid rim protection behind them too. So like Smith and Richmond can get out and gamble. I thought Davon Smith was one of the more underrated additions in the portal this offseason. He was just nails at Utah last year and really does everything well as a guard. Little undersized, but you can get away with it because you have a 6'6" Richmond playing with him in the backcourt. Pitino, we know he's still a good coach, so I think I'm just like underrating this team maybe just a little bit. Like even if I don't think they're going to be a fantastic 3-point shooting team.
I think one guy we haven't mentioned yet, Ruben Prey, could be a really fascinating piece. 6'10", can run the floor, can be a roll man, can also kind of play as a 4 or a 5. I want to know like how much and how they're going to use him because they can kind of use him in a bunch of different ways. Aaron Scott is one of my favorite. I said this on the last show about Reuben Jones, but I love all the North Texas guys. They fight like crazy there, and Scott Jones and Edwards can all hit shots as well. Scott's a good 3-point shooter. He can get to the rim when he needs to as well. But he's definitely going to be on the perimeter a ton. They're probably not going to cut him a ton because they're going to have to keep some semblance of spacing as he's the only guy that's really a reliable shooter in this starting group. They if Brady Dunlap takes a step forward, that could be another guy that comes on the floor and hits shots. I'm kind of over Vince Iwuchukwu at this point. Like I feel like that gimmick's over. Like I know like he had the health issue, so like obviously never really reached the ceiling that we may have thought he could have. So it's unfortunate, but I'm not buying in on Vince at all. There's a lot of buzz around Zuby right now, like a lot of buzz. I'm not sure how much of it is real. But he is an extremely high motor guy, like one of the highest motor guys in the country. That's clearly why Rick loves him, and I think he'll grab rebounds. This team will be really good on the glass. They'll be really physical. Like there will be a recipe to beating them, and I think that like certain teams will be like awful matchups for St. John's, but I think that St. John's is going to be really tough for pretty much everyone to face.
Yeah, that defense is going to be so annoying, and I'm just kind of interested in the way they want to use Sim because I don't know. Rick said that today, and it's just kind of caught my eye. So I apologize if I'm repeating myself a ton, but I think the defense was there with that lineup. That is Sim ready defensively, or is he just that shot maker that this team kind of needs to give them the outside shooting, and then you have the defense with some of those other guys. I just think the way if they think Sim is as good as seemingly they think he is by putting him in the starting lineup, that I think could be really interesting. That's definitely something I'm going to be watching for come. I think they have an exhibition soon, but really more so when the season.
Yeah, they have an exhibition Thursday.
It's against Rutgers. I don't know when it is, but yeah, I know they're playing.
The thing I'm fascinated about is like, how does the Davon Smith, Kadari Richmond, like how do they work together? Because like obviously with Davon Smith, like he's a speed guy, drive to the basket, make plays off of that. Kadari does a lot of that too, but in more of the strength type of way, length, get to the basket. I don't really know how their playmaking will translate when they're both on the floor together and they don't really have a ton of shooting on the floor. So I think there will be times where we see each of them command their own unit for sure. And that's going to push Wilcher off the ball when he's on the floor. And I don't know if Jaden Glover is going to make an impact in year one. I'm not a huge fan. I know Jonathan is a lot lower than I am, even though I'm already not a big fan. But yeah, this is a really interesting team that I will no doubt watch a lot of. I think they're going to be really well coached. Obviously, any Rick Pitino team is going to be really well coached. I think they're going to be much more disciplined, much more physical. And I think they're built to just ruin your day.
They're going to be annoying to play against, man. That defense could be – I really think it's a top 10 defense in the country, and that's just annoying to go against every game. Good luck.
Good thing you're not going against it every single game.
Good point.
I was looking through my text to see what I texted you, Sam, about Glover. I'm just not going to read this. It doesn't need to be said.
Good shooter.
Yeah, he can shoot, but like
yeah.
My number 5 team in the Big East is Creighton.
Yeah.
And I think this is I'm not too enthused by what Creighton did in the transfer portal. I'm not a Pop Isaacs guy. I'm not a Jameer Neal guy. But like I trust Greg McDermott. They still have the framework with Kalkbrenner and Ashworth. And they brought in Fedor Zugic late, who should be an impact player. Mason Miller's back. Why should I be more enthusiastic, Michael, about Creighton?
So first of all, I have a round 2 KO bet in this fight. So if this fight gets knocked out in the round, I will be yelling, and I apologize for that. It's not going to happen, though. My guy looks like shit. But with this Creighton team, I just think you have the floor of Ryan Kalkbrenner. Ryan Kalkbrenner gives you a top 20 defense just by being Ryan Kalkbrenner. He walls up so well that it's just like good luck. Just good luck scoring on him. And the way Creighton defends just so fundamentally sound. I think the addition of Isaacs is really interesting because you needed someone to take some pressure off of Ashworth last year just because he wasn't great to start the year. Granted, I think year 2 in a Creighton system, he'll be better than in year 1. Just took him some time to get used to it. I think Isaacs will take some pressure off of him. But yeah, Isaacs is just kind of a volume shooter. I don't think those two replace everything that you got from Alexander and Shireman. They're not going to. And it's just kind of got to accept that. You're going to need more from Kalkbrenner offensively. Going to need Ashworth to be much better. And just see where you can go from there. At the 4, Mason Miller broke his leg at some point, but it didn't seem like it was going to really keep him out of a ton of games. So I don't know what that injury is. Usually when I think broken leg, it's like, whoa, that is awful. But like it seemed, I don't know what it was. Just wasn't, there was not much detail given in the report. Just something with his knee happened. So we'll see where that goes. Jason Green is a guy that Creighton people kind of like as like a sneaky breakout. Wouldn't surprise me if he's starting to begin the year. I think Jackson McAndrew's a year away. But yeah, I don't know. I just think Creighton has such a high floor just because you have Kalkbrenner that like we know. I mean, he's the conference defensive player of the year for 3 years running. Should he have won it last year? No, but he did. And so that guy's going to be really good. Ashworth's going to be better in his second year in my mind. I think Isaacs will take some pressure off of him, and McDermott will find a way to make that offense work. And lastly, Fedor Zugic, as you mentioned, really good shooter off movement. I don't know when he's going to play and when he'll be ready to fully take in like the offense and be kind of ready to like hit the ground running, especially if it took Ashworth some time. It's going to take the kid coming from Montenegro some time to get used to the offense when, I mean, he showed up, a month ago? I think it's going to take him some time. But yeah, I think this seems interesting. I think you at 5 is probably the lowest you can put Creighton.
Yeah. Jonathan?
Yeah, I think this is a really interestingly constructed roster. Like, a lot of these additions, like some of these additions, like Isaacs and Neal, didn't really feel Creighton-like, but I feel like I trust McDermott enough to like that he's going to figure out how to make it work. I'm really interested in this bench. This is the bench that I might be the most interested in this league because I liked a lot of these guys coming out of high school, and I don't see that a way where multiple of them don't contribute, whether that's McAndrew, Trout, Larry Johnson. Like we know Fred King will play a little as a backup 5, but it's tough to really take Kalkbrenner off the floor with how much their defense dips without him. And then, like we mentioned, Zugic, Michael mentioned Green. Like it's just they're going to be playing some young guys off the bench, and I'm excited to see which of them step up because I'm pretty high on a lot of these guys off the bench as like at least long-term projects.
Yeah, I like Jackson McAndrew. I know Jonathan, you like him. You kind of put me on him. I think he's a piece that will make an impact maybe on day 1 for Creighton. I think that he'll be a big piece of what they do this year if they hit their ceiling. Because I think if they hit their ceiling, I don't know if that means like Pop Isaacs just kind of like fits, like because I don't really know what Pop Isaacs fit really is here. I think the ceiling for Creighton comes the ceiling for Creighton comes like if the guys off the bench come in and hit shots. If Isaacs is smarter with the ball in his hands, Neal is really good defensively, and then Stephen Ashworth has that second-year transfer breakout.
Dare I say they kind of needed a chucker almost because you didn't really have a ton of creation in that lineup without Isaacs, that you just kind of need someone who can get their own shot. If he's not doing it efficiently whatsoever, it's going to hurt him. But I think Creighton kind of was in a position where they needed to take a risk on a guy like Isaacs. So how it works out, we'll see. But
they needed somebody that could create their own shot. But like, you get someone that at least does it somewhat efficiently.
That's fair. He was much better as a freshman than as a sophomore.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Kalkbrenner, what he brings defensively, he's been the same player for the last 3 years now. So like, again, like you'll see him be the same player, but that same player is one of the best defenders in college basketball. Just forces a ton of tough shots for other offenses. I think that's huge for what Creighton does. He is the linchpin of their identity, and I think that when he's gone, it's going to be impossible to replace what he does for them stylistically on the defensive end because he's just such a unique player. And I think that Creighton is going to have a huge identity turn in one way or another when he's gone.
Agreed, 100%. I thought they could have been in some serious trouble if he left this year. I thought they would be a team I'd be talking like. McDermott had 1 year in the Big East where the team was just awful, and I thought that could have been this year if Kalkbrenner's gone. But they have enough to work with this year that they should be a tournament team.
Yeah, absolutely should be a tournament team. Trust McDermott to get it done. There's enough talent here to get it done, even if I don't really understand how it fits. And I think by the end of the year, Zugic is going to be, and Zugic is also like the thing about Zugic, he's old, like he's 21.
Yeah, 21.
So like I know he's probably not going to be able to step in on day one and play 30 minutes a night, but I think he's physically ready to do it. He's played against men, so I think he'll be able to step in and make that happen. But yeah. That's kind of where I stand on Creighton. Not, like they'll be good. I don't really see them as I just don't really see them as a team that's gonna like crack the top 10 this year. My number 6 team in the Big East is the Providence Friars. I think pretty much everybody has Providence at 6. Providence fans might have them a little bit higher, but I think 6 is a pretty fair spot. They brought in a lot in the transfer portal. They bring back Bryce Hopkins. Hopefully, Bryce Hopkins is back to being the player that he was pre-injury because he was awesome. He was one of the best players in the country, one of the most underrated players nationally in college basketball. I feel like he didn't get the respect that he deserved as like one of the best players in the sport. Jumbo wing, jumbo creator. He is like the archetype in college basketball right now, that jumbo wing type player, where he is just physically bigger and stronger than a lot of the other like quote unquote 3-and-D wings, and he's able to drive and post up and do basically anything, and kind of handle the ball and create as a wing creator. They don't have to rely on, and they don't have as many just like offensive non-factors this year. Like last year, they just had guys that couldn't score the ball whatsoever. This year, you bring in Wesley Cardette from Chicago State, who is an NBA level athlete, can jump out of the gym, can score with the ball in his hands. Obviously, a huge jump in structure going from Chicago State to Providence, for going from an independent to the Big East. That's a huge jump. I think he's ready for it. I think he's talented enough to do it. He is really, really good. And then you get Jabri Abdur-Rahim, who's 6'8" and can really shoot. So I think that there's more options offensively. It's not just going to be, hey, Bryce, can you bail us out late in the shot clock the way that Devin Carter did so much last year? Jonathan?
Yeah, I think you're banking a lot here on Bryce Hopkins getting back to very, very close to what he was 2 years ago before the injury. And like that was a very good version of Bryce Hopkins. He was one of the best players in the country. Now, if you don't get him back to like where he was, I still think this team's supporting cast is probably better than they were last year. Like like they relied so much on Devin Carter from last year. And like I think Cardette is he's not a 1, but he's a good 2. I would bank on like Jaden Pierre taking another jump as a junior. Like he was the problem. A lot of the problem Providence had last year is like outside of Cardette and Oduro, you like really didn't know what you were going to get from their other guys on a nightly basis. And I feel like this year there's much more of like a certainty. I still think that like you're going to get some really off nights from Pierre. Asandika will have some nights where he just like kills you and you can't space the floor with him on it. Same goes for Barron. Same goes for Abdur-Rahim, excuse me. But I think like even if Hopkins is not Devin Carter, even if Hopkins is not like what he was 2 years ago, I think like they're going to be way more consistent on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, Providence
they had 4 high minutes guys who were like in the 13% usage range. Like, I don't think that's like that's not something that works. Like Devin Carter, Josh Oduro's combined usage in conference play was 56.8. So that's over half of the possessions that are going to either Carter or Aduro. They just didn't really have enough options offensively. They were stagnant. The offensive structure was not great, but they really guarded. They were really tough. They had so much. They were really tough. Like one of the toughest teams. Just they would fight, and I think that some of that is the guys that were the non-factors offensively were really impactful defenders. Garby Duval had some impact on defense. Rich Barron had some impact on defense. Floyd can guard off the ball. I think Ticket Gaines was a good defender too. Like and those were the four guys who were non-factors offensively. I think you'll see a mixture of them in the game. The two that are back, Barron and Floyd, you'll see them in the game when they need defense, and then Cardet and Abdur Rahim and those guys you'll see more when they need to score the ball, because I think that they have the ability to go to different lineups now. They didn't really have last year when Bryce Hopkins went down. Their lineup construction was a lot of just the same types of guys that really didn't do anything for them.
Yeah, I think the most important thing to note with Cardet and why I'm kind of higher on him the most is that he was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school. He just went to Samford because Coach Gillen's brother was an assistant at Samford. Then he followed Gillen to Chicago State. There you go. But I don't know.
And I do think he's a legit defender too. So he was 29 usage at Chicago State, so he won't need to be as high usage this year. So he'll definitely be able to exert himself more defensively. It's just
I think
everything for this team comes back to also is Christosandiko going to translate? Is he more comfortable playing in the low post this year because he was a little bit too much on the perimeter for a guy that's 7 foot 285. He can fight for rebounds, but he didn't always want to. He can block shots, but he wasn't always down there. I want to know how they're planning on using him. And is Bryce Hopkins going to be back to his best self?
Must have been a split. Damn it. I think Providence is kind of in this weird tier of we don't really know where to place them, so we just all kind of have them 6th, and I just kind of think that's the right ranking because they could, if it all works together, they could be in that top 5, making it a top 6. If it doesn't, they're going to be in that bottom tier, making it a bottom whatever it would be. It's a weird team. They're kind of hard to project. They have some depth. Isandiko is definitely a big question mark because I think St. Joe's was kind of worse with him in the game, especially towards the end of the season. I'm judging that solely based on the fact that Evan Maya had him as a negative. It's not my own fact, believe it or not. I'm not smart enough to run a model. You can probably tell by listening to me speak. That's something that's interesting. I think Bensley Joseph's kind of better off the ball than on it, but you're also going to need him to be on the ball at some times because I just think he's kind of their second ball handler aside from Pierre. So just the team construction, there's definitely areas for just questions, I guess, so to speak. But yeah, this team was built around Bryce Hopkins. When you get Bryce Hopkins back, which you hope is around Thanksgiving tournament time, you hope he's really back for the important games once they get going. Maybe have a game against whatever bye game they play before they go to whatever the Battle for Atlantis. So it's just kind of when does it all happen? When does Hopkins get back to full strength? Because I think this team's just kind of built around him. If not, then I don't know who you're starting at the 4. I'm assuming you kind of start your 3 transfers, 3 wing transfers, Isandiko and Pierre. That's a weird lineup, very small, but we'll see how it works once they get closer to conference play and playing those big games. But yeah, this team's built around Hopkins, 100% built around Hopkins, and that pace and space system, Joseph works well. Jaden Pierre, you guys mentioned him. He could be in the conversation, take a leap. He got better as the season went on. Definitely had some turnover struggles, but once he kind of settled in, and I think having a secondary ball handler like Joseph will kind of help settle him in. Cardick, same thing, can handle the ball. I'm kind of interested to see how he fits into the role just as not the guy for kind of the first time in a hot minute in his college career and going up against legitimate guys almost every game. I'm interested to see how that works. And Jabri Abdur-Rahim, we kind of know what we're getting. I think it was something like 77% of his career shots are from 3, and his career assist to turnover ratio is not pretty. He's out there just to shoot. He's out there to shoot, and he's I mean, he is the stereotypical 3-and-D guy. He's out there to shoot and play defense. That's really all he's going to do. You don't really ask him to put the ball on the floor. He's shooting. He's defending. That's it.
Jonathan, anything to add?
Not really. I mean, I think we covered really everything on this team. One guy we didn't really mention. Not going to try to pronounce his last name, but I know Pat's talked about Oswin a bunch. I'm really interested to see if he can crack this rotation and make an impact.
I mean, he'll have to.
They really don't have like a backup center outside of him.
Like Anton Bonk, is it Bonk or Bonky? Like
Bonk. I'm not 100% sure.
He is like an interesting. He's from which is it Nauru?
I believe.
He's from some Pacific island that has like a very small population. Vanuatu, yeah. So like just a very interesting story there. I mean, either him or Oswin is going to have to play a decent amount because like Christosonico is not going to be able to play more than 25 minutes max, and that's if he hits. So they need Oswin or Bonky to really hit and just be productive at some level for them.
I'd be surprised if it wasn't Oswin. I don't think.
Yeah, I think Oswin is the better option there.
His defensive game is very far ahead of his offensive game, but he very athletic. He's going to block shots defensively, and all things considered, with the amount of scorers in this lineup, it's kind of all you're going to need from him.
Yeah, that's kind of where I think we stand on Providence. Let's move on to number 7. That's the Butler Bulldogs, Michael. That is your team or one of your teams. And I think that we'll kind of let you take the lead here. I know we did the full Butler preview with you, but first of all, how old is that hat? And
I think I had this before I moved into college, so we're working on 5 years.
It looks like a hat that is from like 2011. That's just been. It looks like a dad ball cap from like 2011.
Oh, it is 100% a dad ball cap, and that's why I love it because I have zero dad swag, just none. But yeah,
anyway, you take the lead on Butler.
Yeah, Jamil Telford. I love Jamil Telford's game. I think he was. I definitely said this on the Butler preview pod we did. I think he was underrated from like NBA scouts and people just talking like NBA draft big boards. I think what he does is going to translate to the next level. He does everything, just everything. He's a generalist. He does everything really well. Nothing like amazing. Like you're not going to see like that one play from Telford that was jaw dropping. He just does everything well. He is the epitome of very solid. And he's effective at what he does. He can shoot the ball, can put the ball on the floor, defends multiple positions. He's just kind of like the glue that's going to keep this team together. If this team hits their ceilings, because Jamil Telford is just going to be excellent. He just does everything. Score from all 3 levels. Literally anything you can think of on a basketball court, Jamil Telford does it. So we'll just go there. Pierre Brooks brings you scoring. Pierre Brooks is going to be able to score the ball. We saw that last year. He's not just going to like be in Space Jam. Yeah, Space Jam and just lose all the powers that he had. He can score the ball. And I think one area with him was towards the end of the season, he just kind of settled for a lot of jump shots. Hopefully you can get him going downhill more and using that frame to just kind of move defenders and finish around the rim, especially if you want to use him at the 2. If he's going to be going up against some of the smaller 2s in this conference, move him, get a bucket. Just going to work there. I think the complementary pieces are where the questions occur with this team because that wing duo is as good as you're going to find in the conference. A couple teams are probably a little bit better, but like they're in that top tier for sure. It's just, okay, with Colby King, is he ready to be a point guard? Because he didn't play point guard at Tulane last year. So it's like, is he doing that? Or are you really just going to run Telford at the 1? And I just kind of have questions because he wasn't great against good competition. So I got questions with King. I need to see it with King. And he'll probably play well in some of the bye games. That's not what I'm speculating. It's more so, how does he do against guys who are as athletic as him? Because when I think Colby King, I'm going to use a fight betting analogy, so I apologize, but I'll explain it. Kind of a moments over minutes guy. He's a guy where he's going to have 2 plays that just drop your jaw on the floor. And you're like, wow, this guy is amazing. But then he'll end with 7 points. And it's like, oh, okay. So I'm just kind of interested if they can get Colby King to be consistent or if he's just going to be that guy that plays in spurts and plays so well for those spurts, but then just kind of goes invisible. That's going to be interesting. You know what you're getting out of Pat McCaffrey? I mean, he's been in college 4 years, 10 points a game guy. solid, can shoot it, can finish inside, just solid. He's going to be solid. Andre Screen, another question mark. Is Andre Screen taking a leap and ready to be one of the better starting fives in the Big East? Or is he just going to be the same guy he was last year, a catch and dunk guy? And I actually looked at the stats the other day. Andre Screen was under 50% from the field in Big East play. That can't happen if this team's going to be consistent. He's just going to need to finish better around the rim. It's kind of simple, but yeah, and I think he's capable of doing so. We'll definitely see once this team hits Big East play, but I think there's a high floor. You have Telford, you have Brooks, you know what those guys are giving you. McCaffrey's a floor guy too, and you kind of know what the baseline for Andre Screen is. This team has a high floor where, like, yeah, even if it bottoms out, I still don't see them at the very bottom of this league. And you just kind of hope that those guys, Telford, Brooks, can take you a step further. You can get a jump from Finley Bizjack. Landon Moore can be a solid bench point guard. Jimmy Kaiser looks better offensively than he did at Maryland. But, yeah, I just think this team is a high floor.
Jonathan?
Yeah, I kind of echo a lot of Michael's points here. I mean, you really just, you know what you're getting out of Telford and Brooks. Both are excellent players. Both can score the basketball. I think where Butler has the question marks is, like, what are they getting out of the other positions? Like, can Colby King play the point in the Big East? Is he consistent enough? Are we going to get a breakout from Finn Bizjack? What are you going to get out of Andre Green and Bowden Capke at the center position? Like, I love teams that, like, whose best players are their wings, but, like, you also need, like, a center and point guard who, like, can play their role effectively to be able to maximize your best players being your wings, because, like, those guys are playing off ball. You're not you don't have, like, a set spot on the floor where they're getting touches. Like, they're going to kind of be all over the place. So can Colby King be, like, the calming influence for this team? I did like the Patrick McCaffrey addition. Like, I think that's just, like, a solid player off the bench who, you know, will hit shots for you. He'll bring experience. Played obviously a system at Iowa that had a very good offense. So I don't really have much more to add to this. Like, I would assume that Mata does a better job using Jamie Kaiser than what Maryland did last year, because, like, they kind of would just stick him in a corner and hope he would make shots, and that's not what Jamie Kaiser does. So,
yeah, I mean, I like Colby King. I think he's athletic. I think he can score. I do see the problems. Like, this team could be bad defensively. That might be understating it. But yeah, as you said, Michael, the bottom out outcome for this team is, like, you still have Pierre Brooks and Jameel Telford. They can both really score. This team will score really no matter what. So even if they hit, like, their 0th percentile, they're probably not at the very bottom of this league. Moving on to my number 8 team in the Big East, that would be Villanova, coached by the man himself, Kyle Neptune. And Jonathan, where are our concerns with Villanova?
Main concern is that, like, you took a team last year that didn't win a lot, wasn't as good as we thought. Like, they were still, like, better than, like, people on Twitter made it seem, but at the same time, like, Brickus was on a losing team. Poplar was, like, is expected. He's going from a situation where he was one of the featured guys, team was bad. Now he's going to another situation where he's going to be one of the featured guys. Like, Eric Dixon being back, like, is great. He's probably going to be an all first team league player if I had to guess. But, like, this bench kind of concerns me. What are you going to, like, can Tyler Perkins step up and play at this level? I know he was hurt last year. We'll see how he bounces back. Mosley and Hodge are good, but, like, those are your, like 5th and 6th guys, maybe 6th and 7th guys. Like,
I expect him to start Boache. Dixon wants to play 4 more. That's one of the reasons I got him back.
I don't like Dixon at the 4 I just don't think it's the best case scenario for Villanova. I think that the highest ceiling outcome for Villanova is one where the freshmen really hit. Hodge and Mosley in particular are 2 guys that I think could hit. And those guys would play best if Dixon's playing at the 5. And like Brickus could be like Brickus can score. Like we know that. I think he's we talked about Khalil Brantley yesterday at Oklahoma State. Brickus is, I would say, a better fit for the high major game than Brantley. I don't think either of them are going to be like awesome high major players, but I think Brickus probably has a better chance of being a pretty good one. Tyler Perkins, I think, eventually will be a very good high major basketball player. I just don't know if that's going to be this year because he struggled to break through that freshman wall last year. He had a lot of games where teams kind of were able to shut him down, and he's good when he is kind of playing in control and getting to the line, and he can kind of attack the basket. I just hope Villanova doesn't try to just like jack up a whole bunch of threes again like they did last year. I mentioned this when I was talking TJ Bamba at Oregon. Like they took a bunch of guys that were really good athletes, could get to the basket, and just told them to jack up a lot of threes.
Yep.
They like Kyle Neptune like kind of missed the whole process point of what made Villanova basketball, which is weird because he was part of Villanova basketball when it was Villanova basketball with Jay Wright. And I don't have really much hope left for Kyle Neptune. I don't think anybody really has any hope left for him. But again, Eric Dixon could be the player of the year in this league if Villanova finishes like 6th or 5th. If they somehow really like go past expectations, it would probably mean Eric Dixon had a total monster year.
That's sad. That's really sad. Oh, hey, this guy from Villanova, he could win player of the year in this league if they're like an average team.
I actually won't have Dixon on my first team all Big East, and allow me to explain why. Yeah, actually, I think it's kind of simple. I think this team could really bottom out. I'm going to be lower on Villanova than most. I see Ken Baum had him 20th in the initial opening. That tells me I will be betting against Villanova a lot this year. I thought he would have had him in the 40s, and I would have probably looked to find spots there. The 20s, I just think that's way too high, especially because Dixon is suspended for one game. It's against Lafayette. I think they'll be fine. But I'm just kind of lower on this team. I just kind of the vibes around Villanova. It just kind of feels like a much higher level, much better version because of Eric Dixon, especially version of Ewing's last year. You just kind of know the result that could happen. It's just like, okay, if this doesn't work, and like, especially if like, let's say they lose a Big 5 game this year, it could just come, everything. What can go wrong will go wrong. You could get full, oh God, after that. Not the biggest fan of Poplar. I definitely see the upside though. Really like good score at Miami. It was efficient. Had good guards next to him too, and I think he'll be a good complementary piece next to Eric Dixon and next to Jimmy Brickus. So I think they'll make that work. Jordan Longino, good defensively. Like I think this team should have a decent defense almost regardless, because even if you're on a Boache at the 5, he's going to be able to block shots. He'll be able to block shots and rebound and rim run, and that's really all you can ask of him. So just from that perspective, I could see it, but I could just see one thing goes wrong when we get a full Murphy's Law of Villanova. What can go wrong will go wrong. And the vibes on the run of the program just seem kind of low. The roster construction just feels kind of weird. I don't really know what they're looking for. They seem kind of desperate last second. You got Poplar. Is he going to be enough to make this team that high level? We'll see. I'm lower on this Villanova team than most. I have them 10th in the Big East. And that is the lowest point outcome in my mind. It is. That ranking is fully on them just bottoming out. I just think the vibes around Villanova are low. And I don't know. Dixon definitely gives you a decent floor, but because I have him 10th, I don't have Dixon on my first team because I can't remember the last time a guy on a 10th place team made the Big East first team. And where Dixon is probably talented enough to do it, I don't know if the pieces around him are going to help him succeed. I do like Tyler Perkins, though, as you guys mentioned. I think he will be a good high major player one day. Just good instincts. Good shooter. Had 22 and 6 against Villanova in like his 3rd college game against a really talented Villanova team. So you know that he can play. Frankly, it wouldn't stun me if Perkins is their 2nd best player. I would put that as a very low percentage outcome, but I think it could happen.
Interesting. My number 9 team in the Big East is Seton Hall. Again, it feels like it feels wrong to like rank a Shaheen Holloway team this low because like we know what Shaw can do, but the talent level on this roster is, but it's brutal. Like it is bad. Like they have like the NIL problems that they had that were like very public. Like if I didn't hear any of that this offseason, I could have told you they had NIL struggles looking at this roster because this is scraps. Like they brought in Chauncey Jenkins and Zion Harmon in their backcourt like really late. Garby Duwall, who's like a big time buy low, like maybe. Scotty Middleton is another buy low. Gus Alden like didn't play. Could you even call that a buy low? Like there's just a lot of buy lows on here, and you can't expect. I just can't expect all of them to hit.
Yeah, I'm rooting for Zion Harmon. You guys know, I feel like we've talked about this, how good he was in high school. Like he was just that dude. And then he comes to college and then like just doesn't play because he took something laced seemingly. And it's just like, oh goodness, gets out of Western Kentucky, Bethune-Cookman, and looks solid for that team. So hopefully Zion Harmon is kind of ready. That's another team I covered in the Everything College Basketball magazine. Please give me money. I have literally $0. That's a lie. But just imagine that you're like donating to a poor kid. Anyway, yeah, just with the Seton Hall team, I also have him ninth just because I don't want to buy too low on Shaw, but this roster, as you mentioned, just the NIL, like you can tell their NIL problems. And frankly, if you're running out, seems like they're going to run Duwall at the 1, Adaiwusu at the 2, Coleman 3, Middleton at the 3-4, and then Toomey at the 5. Toomey, I think is honestly, I kind of think he's more of a 3 than a 5 at this level, just because he's so skinny and just kind of wants to play on the perimeter more. He's, that dude perfect stereotype of the guy, the 6'7" guy who just wants to shoot threes. That's kind of Toomey to me. That's just kind of who he is. Also had turnover problems at Evansville. Granted, he'll have the ball in his hands less, so I assume that won't be bad. But yeah, I don't know. I think this roster's gonna be good defensively, but I don't think they have any shot creators. Frankly, it's just the reason they aren't convinced, like in the definitive tier of 10-11, is because you're buying a Shaheen Holloway. That's really it. That is the only reason. If this roster had DePaul on their chest, you could very much argue them for 11, but you buy into Shaheen Holloway, buy the vision defensively, and Isaiah Coleman could be a guy, hopefully, that is ready to take a step up and average, maybe even in the double figures. Same with Scotty Middleton.
Like,
just
you look at like Middleton, Garby Duwall, Coleman, Ligbe, Toomey, like they'll guard. Like this team will guard. Yeah. It's a Seton Hall team. It's Shaheen Holloway. They'll play hard. They'll guard. But like this could be a cataclysmic offensive disaster.
Yeah.
Like I don't think there's like Zion Harmon and Chauncey Jenkins are like solid shot creators at a much lower level. Yassine Toomey is a solid scorer at a lower level. Scotty Middleton is the guy that like I look to and say, all right, this is probably the most talented offensive player on the team. And that's a problem because he didn't show much last year at Ohio State. Like this could be the worst offense in the conference.
Yeah. I just pulled up their non-conference schedule. Sorry to cut you off, Jonathan, if you were looking to talk, but they play VCU and Rutgers in the non-conference.
They might not
combined reach 100 points.
Well, Rutgers will score.
They can't shoot. They cannot shoot. They got 0 shooters around Dylan Harper and Ace. Not a Rutgers body.
Hayes and Zach Martini are great shooters.
They are, but are they ready to play at this level?
Yeah. We just talked about that like 2 hours ago.
So to get my piece in on Seton Hall, like I can't believe I'm making like another like television reference like for this show as like a guy who's like objectively not a TV show or movie guy. But like every time Seton Hall took a transfer this offseason, like all you could like think about is like Shaheen Holloway standing there as like Gru from Despicable Me in the one scene where he's like, in terms of money, we have
no money. That is not TV. That is a movie.
Yeah, totally. You get the point. Like this team will finish probably top 25 to 30 defensively. They could finish below 150 offensively if it bottoms out. Like they are that bad. Like they took a bunch of like what felt like high major rejects at their former schools outside of like maybe Prince Bay and some mid-major guys that like they more felt like they were transferring to this level to fill out rosters more than like they were actual like real pieces. Like Chauncey Jenkins was like 15 a game last year at Old Dominion, but like really inefficient. Harmon actually like was good, but he was playing at a really low level at Bethune-Cookman. Like I'd feel more comfortable if he was transferring to like a higher mid-major maybe than like the Big East. And then like I thought Toomey was really good in stretches last year for Evansville, but like he like doesn't really do a super great job using his frame, and like you said, Michael, he does like to play on the perimeter a ton, which like that can help a team that might need some shooting, but ultimately like he's probably coming off the bench behind League Bay for this team.
I don't know. I want this team to be good. I love Shah. Like I just love Shah, but I struggle to see it with this roster. I don't see the ceiling. It's just, it could be, as you mentioned, really, really bad offensively. And it just seems like they'll be in a lot of games that are like 57, 52, that Seton Hall is always in, and then they'll have the ball, and then the shot will just hit the backboard. It won't even touch the rim. And it's just like, okay, that's the game.
It's time to talk about the Hoyas. It's time to talk about my number 10 team in the Big East, Georgetown, coached by rich ass mother Ed Cooley.
That's a great line. There were some lines he had that were really corny. Like he tried to get when Dan Hurley said, "You better get us now because we're coming."
Yeah.
Ed Cooley tried to say that like 5 times. That's so corny. But rich as a motherfucker, rich as shit is such a good line. It's an excellent line.
It's so good. It's so good because it's organic.
Yeah.
It's organic too. It's Ed Cooley didn't do a lot good last year. That was like it looked like he left his entire coaching skill in Providence to be picked up by Kim English, because Kim English kind of coached that team in Providence like the Ed Cooley teams in Providence, where they just were like, they didn't like, the offensive structure looked really strange, but they were just really tough, played really hard defensively. And Georgetown did not play hard. Like they did not play hard defensively. If you're going to argue that they did play hard defensively, that would be even more problematic because they were awful defensively.
I would argue they played harder than the Ewing teams, which is a very low bar. But I would also argue that the guy who was protecting the rim last year he just didn't have it, and it's not his fault because there was no help on the weak side either. But yeah, he wasn't a great rim protector.
And then they go out in the transfer portal, and the one thing that they don't need is a scoring guard, and a scoring point guard. And the one thing that they spend a lot of their money on is a scoring point guard. Like, I don't think Jaden Epps is very good. Like, he's good enough, like, to be, like, if you put better players around him, he's good enough. But like, if you have him, you shouldn't spend a lot of your NIL budget on another small guard that doesn't really guard but can really score.
The defense is definitely a concern. I'm going to disagree with you on the offense, though. I think Epps is a 2. I think that's just kind of his natural position. He's a combo guard, but I think he's just better at the 2. He won't have to take as many step back Bobby Jack threes. Yeah, the defense is the issue, but I think it'll work offensively.
Point guard that defends. Don't get a guard that doesn't guard.
I think the offense is going to work with those two. I think those two can both create and score, and I think they will make each other more efficient, actually, which I think
I'm not saying that they won't work offensively. I'm saying that that's going to be the worst defensive backcourt in maybe all of high major basketball.
I can't disagree with that, though I hope it's not true.
Mississippi State's got a really interesting one, but like
Kanye Clary wants to play.
Kanye Clary and Josh Hubbard, it's like a combined height of like less than the basketball hoop. But yeah, Georgetown, they also don't have like a 5 that I trust. Like Drew Fielder is like not good enough. Thomas Sorber is not good enough.
Sorber, everything, the buzz at Georgetown has been Sorber is real. It's been like other guys
I will see it when I believe it.
Yeah, Sorber, the buzz
other way
with
around.
Sorber, he's real. Super skilled. Sorber, I think he probably starts. I think if it's not McNeely, Sorber is the Big East freshman of the year. I think it's those two kind of on a tier of their own, and then the other guys who likely come off the bench.
So
I wasn't
like I'm low on this team too, but if I could play like a little devil's advocate, they got rid of a lot of guys from last year's team.
They did get rid of a lot of guys that sucked.
Like they got rid of a lot of guys who, like, if you told me they were like serving as double agents, like I'd believe you. Like there were like you would watch Georgetown last year, and like some of these guys, it's like if you told them to go out there and like actively hurt Georgetown's chance of winning, I'm not sure what they would have done differently. And I do think that, like, as much as I like didn't think they need Malik Mack, like he is a really good player, and
it's
like
an infusion of talent.
He's a big time talent. He's a big time scorer. Like Micah Peavy kind of is what he is, but like for Georgetown, like being what you are, it's like kind of what they need. Like they need some certainty in the lineup, and like Peavy is not going to score a ton, but he's going to defend. He can guard pretty much any sort of guy on the wing that you throw at him. Like he's been an effective player at multiple stops, and I would bet on him being an effective player here. The defense like can probably only go upward. Like I can't imagine it goes down. It's still going to be pretty atrocious unless Thomas Sorber is just like the next coming of like Dikembe Mutombo. like I think I'm really interested to see like Julius Halafanua has been like kind of hyped up recently. I feel like I'm excited to see what he provides. I think like Fielder plays hard. Like they could use a little more of his energy, and he was like actually one of the guys last year that like wasn't actively hurting the team when he was out there. Like I thought he should have been playing more. Like I think this team's still going to be bad, but like I can make an argument that like Masood, Heath, Brumbaugh, especially Cook, man, and like even Dontrez Styles being gone is like a net positive.
I don't think Dontrez Styles took a good shot last year. Like
he was efficient when he hit some crazy shots, but I think it was underrated. Styles couldn't defend really bad defensively. Everyone was.
Like that team was 321st defensively, and I'm not sure like they'll probably finish with a really, really low ranked defense again. Like I don't know if I don't know if it's possible to finish 321st again, but like if it is, this team could do it.
So
no, Micah Peavy's not going to be on a defense that bad. It's just not possible.
Looking at this team, by the way, like last year, I'm looking at Evan Mia right now. They had 8 guys that played 500 possessions. 7 of them were a negative DBPR. And off the top of my head, 6 of those 7 are gone. The one positive on the defensive end last year for them, according to Evan Mia, by the way, was Drew Fielder.
Hang the banner, Drew Fielder.
That seems problematic. I think that says more about Supreme Cook than it does about Drew Fielder.
Supreme Cook was a negative 1.74 DPPR. Like that should be impossible.
Yeah, Georgetown. They were 3rd worst in the country at 2-point percentage allowed. 3rd in the country. The opponents were like 57.4%, if I remember correctly, inside the arc against Georgetown. It cannot be that bad next year. It just can't be. Yeah,
they really need Sorber to be good on that end.
You do. But I also think part of the defensive scheme, so to speak, is literally just going to be run Peavy and Burks out there and just kind of have them just be long and just create as much havoc as they can. Because you're going to need someone to do that on the back end of likely Epps and Mac playing together quite a bit. One interesting thing, which it seems to finally be clicking in my head, is that they want to run Peavy at the 1 when Mac isn't on the floor to also keep Epps going off the ball. I think what that's going to do is it means Curtis Williams plays the backup too. So they just kind of go bigger there, and then that's how they're going to try to counter some of the defensive woes having smaller guards. I think that's interesting. I don't know how that's going to work. I think it's really interesting. But yeah, I don't know. I think this Georgetown team is a very low floor given the recent results. Shocking. I know that's a hot take. I think the ceiling is there with this team. I think you just have so much more talent than the last few years, frankly. Like Mac and Epps is a really talented backcourt. Offensively, if those guys both hit together, that's a top 3 offensive backcourt in the conference, I believe.
They're both really good offensive players.
Yeah. PV, and I think Epps gets more efficient with a real point guard next to him. No disrespect to Brumbaugh. I actually didn't think he was I think he got probably a little more grief than he should have last year just because he's just kind of a solid player who you need like really good guys around him, and he just didn't have that. But Mac just kind of is a different level talent-wise. Mac can kind of take over games where Brumbaugh is just kind of like going to smooth operate his way through. PV, Burks, I think Burks has a high ceiling. We'll see if they can get it out of him. He's just kind of one of those guys that has like a ton of potential, but like none of it has yet been actualized. PV solid. And I think Zorba's the truth. Just based on what I've heard out of practices, it's people who are not typically the most optimistic about like everything, especially freshmen. They love Sorber. Sorber seems to be like he could be the truth in terms of like what a freshman big is going to give you. So
like, Sorber was like a huge a huge impact guy, just like getting his hands out there, blocking shots, getting deflections in high school. In the Philly Catholic League, that's kind of like his entire game. It's just like he's gonna muck things up, block shots, get deflections, cause chaos, and like the Philly Catholic League kind of is organized chaos. Like that's kind of it kind of plays into what Sorber can do. So I'm not 100% sure like how the transition will be to the Big East. So that's one thing I'm watching. I'm not a big Sorber guy, as you can obviously tell.
Yeah.
This Georgetown team, like there will be, okay. I'm not sure if there will be games that like the backcourts like will win them with their offense in conference play, but there will be games where the backcourt keeps them in it with their offense, in conference play, because it's that talented. It's just that they don't guard a chair.
Before we move on here, I'd probably bet on Kayvon Mulready finding his way into the rotation.
Oh yeah.
At some point during the season, like really popped on film to me. Versatile guard, can score at all three levels. Like very good frame to like be able to kind of like play booty ball with. Like if they can get him to kind of figure it out and work on moves in the post with him. Like he's like 6'4", 210. So like that could be a matchup nightmare if they can really get him going.
He's really good defensively too. I think he'll be a productive piece off the bench, and we'll see him kind of progress through his college career. He's just going to be another useful piece in the backcourt. I think definitely there are quite a bit of worries with this team defensively, as you guys have mentioned at length. If Mac goes down, who's your backup point guard? I'm assuming they kind of transition Epps to the 1. Especially, I know they're going to run PV at times at the 1, but like if you're starting a game, if Mac is hurt, is Epps the 1? I'm assuming so. So interested to see how that works. And the defense, obviously. And just because there have been no recent results recently, you can't have a floor for Georgetown. But I think I'm buying the talent more than most. I think PV is kind of the mold to me of a really underrated transfer. Like I love Otega Owe at Kentucky. You guys are national guys, so I know you know that name. I think he is one of the most underrated transfers in the country. I think PV is a very similar mold that he raises the floor of this team. And that's kind of what they needed, as you guys have alluded to. So I think I
like PV, but like, is he really good enough to like reshuffle the deck for this team?
Defensively, honestly, I do think so. Just because they're starting with nothing, that you have a guy in PV that's going to give you, okay, just because you have PV, you have length and Burks, and then what Sorber gives you, this defense isn't going to be worse than like 150th, which isn't a high bar, but that's also a start.
I think it'll be worse than 150th.
No, dude. It might not be like substantially higher than that, but like I bet it'll be right around that mark. Like, dude, they had no rim protectors last year at all.
Dude, they were 321.
I know, and like they did like PV and Sorber are better defenders than anyone they had last year, and like those are both.
And they were 321,
and they're both like crucial defenders.
And they were, and moving on, they were number 321, and yet they were still the number 10 defense in the conference of 11 teams, because DePaul, who is the projected worst team in the Big East for me, and for basically everybody. They are still going to be like 100 spots better than they were last year in KenPom. It's the you can't get any worse, and I actually think that there's a couple pieces to build on here. I am, as I said earlier, a huge fan of Layden Blocker. I think he is going to be their best player, their leading scorer. He will lead them in scoring. He'll lead them in assists. He will guard the on-ball guards, and he will do a really good job of that, at least as good as he pretty much can. I think he is really physical for his size. He's unafraid of contact. He's really smart. He was so much better. Arkansas was better when he was on the floor last year. I think that the fact that he's at DePaul, I think he could help teams that are a lot better than DePaul. I'm surprised that he ended up at DePaul. But I'm not big on the rest of this group. Connor Enright, I like him. I like Jacob Meyer a little bit. I think Isaiah Rivera is all right. But, like, there's not, like, I don't know if any of those guys are going to be, like, legit, like, high major caliber players. And that's kind of the problem I reach. Blocker's the one guy that I look at and say, all right, I know he's going to be a high major impact player.
I like the pieces they have for the future. Like some of those young guards, like Jacob Meyer was really interesting when I watched him, I think probably about like 3 weeks ago. Shoots lefty, shoots it well, but doesn't shoot like ton of threes. He's 40%, but I think he took like 3 a game. But he finishes around the rim better with his offhand, his right hand, which was, I think, really interesting. Yeah, I just think this team's kind of a lot like Cooley's first year at Georgetown. They're going to win a couple games. You'll see, like, in a couple games, you'll see the vision of what it's going to be in a year, 2 years, whatever it is down the line. But, yeah, not the – I don't know. I think it's kind of a lot like Cooley's first year. I'll let Jonathan go before I say anything more.
Yeah, like this team has 4 Valley guys, which obviously makes me exciting for this team. Like, and Wright did just like a great job developing last year. Like, improved tremendously as a shooter. Really can guard on ball and make you uncomfortable as a ball handler. Rivera, like, he was a relatively high usage guy at UIC last year. I'd bank on that number. Like, he was like taking 24% of their shots last year when he was on the floor. And I bet that goes down, but I bet his efficiency stays relatively the same. I'd probably bet on this team's best player being Jacob Meyer or David Skogman. Like, Meyer was like a pretty good player on a bad team last year at Coastal, but like really impressed as a freshman and like was like destined to move up. Skogman has always kind of just been a reliable player wherever he's been. And then like off the bench, like we don't know if Layden will start, but like I really liked Layden and I liked the upside when he was in high school. He brings a lot on the defensive end. I think Holtman did a good job here, like finding some pieces that like, just like can come in and play defense for you. This is obviously not like a program that expects to come in here and win a ton of games this year. They're just, you're trying to get building blocks. And like they have some young guards that they're probably a huge fan of. You have 3 sophomore guards in Meyer, Layden Blocker, and David Thomas. You have a freshman, Chris Riddle, who you got from Chicago. You have a freshman from Wisconsin in, say, Kukana. So, like, you're just like, okay, like we're going to get, like, guys that, we know will come in and play hard, even if they're not Big East caliber players, like D'Amico, like MJ Benson, to kind of, and like Connor Enright, to show these younger guys, like, hey, like, we got to play like hard, like really hard to like stay in and even like try to win games. And like, that'll be a really good building block for them in a couple years down the road. Maybe not even next year, but like maybe in 2 years when, they really get their stuff together NIL wise, because we know that situation is not good. Sam, you said it earlier. I think actually I might have said it earlier. Like us talking about like Georgetown and like DePaul is like the Hello Human Resources meme, like where it's like oh, like DePaul, like you're gonna like you're gonna be so much better even though you're still gonna suck. And Georgetown, it's just like get it together already.
That's a good way of phrasing it. Yeah, I like Skogman. He can shoot it for a big and like passes pretty well. He was in that really intricate Davidson offense. They're probably going to use him in a similar sort of sense. One worry with him much like Toomey, he's skinny, man. I think teams are just going to be able to move him around. So it's definitely a concern there. And NJ Benson, you're not moving NJ Benson, but with Skogman, you can kind of move him a bit. So I don't know. I think this team, like, as I said, it's kind of like Cooley's first year. So if this team isn't very good, I'm going to give Holtman a pass. You just want to see the vision and some organized stretches of play. But yeah, I still think the talent's great. I think they have some floor guys. I think aside from Blocker, the ceiling's just so capped. But you hope to keep some of these guys, lay a foundation for what is to come in the future. But yeah, interested to watch the team from that perspective, but I don't think it'll lead to many wins in conference play. I agree with your 11th ranking.
There's a very real chance that like this team can slice their KenPom ranking in half from last year, and that would be a great season for them.
Agreed.
Yeah, and they would still suck.
Yeah, that would make them 152nd.
Jesus Christ.
Jesus.
We're so bad.
Woof.
It is unfathomable how bad DePaul was last year. Like they were worse than the first Kenny Payne Louisville team. They would have been an underdog on a neutral against Bethune. They were.
Shout out Zion Harmon.
Yeah.
Dude, right on. And they beat Kenny Payne in Louisville last year too. I remember that game because
this was a high major team, and like I think maybe one of their guys transferred to a high major, and he's gonna be like the third stringer.
Yeah, Boss did. Henley went to UNLV, 2 EMU guys.
Also, just to go back to Zion Harmon real quick. Like he was playing like 17 EYBL before he like stepped in a high school classroom. He was nuts.
Filthy, man. Like if you can get that version of Zion Harmon, so it could be pretty good, but does that version of Zion Harmon still exist?
Right.
No.
But man, he was so I'm rooting for him. I remember because he's from the same town that I am. He was playing high school ball by me. Well, not playing high school ball, but playing like middle school ball by me. So like I'm rooting for him. I'll admit it. I'm rooting for him. Who knows if it's real, but I am.
I think a lot of people are rooting for him. I think Seton Hall. I think Seton Hall's a team that like we all want to see do better than like we all want to see Seton Hall do better than Villanova. Let's be honest here.
Yeah. Love you, Tom.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Jonathan, you want to take us home, or anyone else have anything to say?
Yeah, you're out. I know your outro, but like, I mean, MMA references. There were Gru references here. Like, come on.
We had everything today.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. If you came to hear about Tyler Self and where he's working, you came to the right place. If you came to hear about Georgetown having 7 negative defenders last year, you came to the right place. If you came to hear about Caleb Grill and the latest happenings with him, you came to the right place. This is season 5, episode 26 of Brackets, Bubbles, and Bid Stealers, our biggest preview. Thank you to everyone who joined us to watch, our guests that all came on for our conference previews. We will have more content coming soon as the college basketball season fast approaches. We'll see you next time.